Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to today's Infopedia web conference titled Envisioning High-Level Architecture Workshop. We're finishing a few last-minute preparations for our show and we'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome again to today's Infopedia web conference titled Envisioning High-Level Architecture Workshop. We are broadcasting this web conference via Skype meeting broadcast and the audio can be heard through your PC speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, we ask that you please disconnect your browser at this time. Attendees may access the web conference recording via a link that will be delivered within 72 hours post-conference. You may ask a question at any time using the Q&A panel located either to the right of your screen or by scrolling down to just below the video pane. Our presenters are going to be responding to your questions throughout the presentation and again at the end of the presentation during a formal Q&A. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's web conference, first try refreshing your web browser by pressing the F5 key. If that doesn't work for you, you'll want to click on the support link at the top right corner of your browser. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get started with our session today. Presenting for us from Microsoft, we have Senior Customer Engineering Architect, August Rachman. August, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Janice. Hello, welcome to the SOF training on Envisioning High-Level Architecture Workshop. In this training, we will also cover the execution planning workshop that follows the high-level architecture workshop. My name is Agus Rahman. I'm a Senior Customer Engineering Architect based out of Sydney, Australia, and I'm part of the Skype Customer Experience and Deployment team. If you've been watching the SOF training series thus far, I would expect for you to be familiar with SOF already. For those joining for the first time, you can get further information about SOF from skypeoperationframework.com. SOF is continuously updated, and we are actively listening to your feedback. Let us know what works, what needs to be corrected, what needs to be added, anything. Please go to skypeoperationframework.com/feedback to share your feedback. This is a version 1 of this training. Due to the ever-changing nature of the Skype for Business online service and SOF, I would like to point out that things may have changed upon watching this training. For most recent up-to-date trainings, go to skypeoperationframework.com/academy. Let's start with the high-level architecture workshop. The high-level architecture workshop is delivered as part of the envision stage of plan phase in SOF execution model. As the title implies, we will be discussing high-level design at this stage, whilst the detailed design of the solution will be covered in the design stage through a dedicated workshop called Cloud PBX Architectural Workshop. The intent of the workshop is to discuss and make high-level architecture decisions related to Skype for Business Cloud PBX and PSTN conferencing. The content of the workshop covers a session to go over Skype for Business overview, and it will be a useful content to deliver as a refresher or to get workshop participants up to speed with the latest development in Skype for Business. In order to deliver the high-level workshop, a thorough understanding of Skype for Business solution will be required. This covers the capabilities in the current version, differences between the previous versions, on-premises versus online, hybrid, and Office 365 dependencies such as Windows Azure AD and Exchange Online. And last but not least, understanding of enterprise voice, dial-in conferencing, Exchange Unified Messaging, Cloud PBX, and Cloud PSTN conferencing will be very important in this workshop. As the workshop is meant to deliver high-level architecture decisions as an outcome, having the right participants will be the key success factor here. At this point, technical decision makers, or TDMs, will be the primary audience. Prior to the workshop, it is expected that the previous activities have been completed, such as reviewing the discovery questionnaire, reviewing the existing call quality data, if applicable, and having the objective key results, or OKR, and business use cases defined. This will set the stage of the workshop so that there will be no further discussions about organizational strategic directions and decisions, and give you, as the workshop facilitator, a context regarding the target environment. To facilitate the delivery of the workshop, SOF provides an asset called Envisioning Architecture Workshop Deck that can facilitate the workshop. Please review the content prior to delivery, and due to the ever-changing nature of Skype for Business online service, update the information as necessary. In delivering this training session, I will use the asset to walk you through the workshop process. The high-level architecture workshop is considered a success when decisions can be made in regards to deployment model, online only or hybrid, on-premises only is a valid option too, but in this workshop, we will be focusing on Cloud PBX. PSTN conferencing high-level design, mainly around the decision on how, where, and when Microsoft PSTN conferencing will be enabled for the sites in scope of the project. Cloud PBX high-level design, especially around the decision on PSTN connectivity options to be made for the sites in scope of the project. The high-level architecture workshop is not meant to discuss low-level design aspects of the solution, and this topic will be addressed in subsequent workshops. There is the Cloud PBX architectural workshop to discuss detailed design of the Cloud PBX solutions to be implemented, and network readiness workshop to discuss about network requirements, gaps in the existing network implementation, and remediation steps to address the gaps. Execution planning workshop will give the opportunity for project stakeholders to further discuss about roles and responsibilities or RACI model, risk plan, and project schedules. The high-level architecture workshop will provide an input to those additional workshops, given the architectural decisions made as the outcome of this workshop. The first topic to deliver in the high-level architecture workshop is the Skype for Business overview. This, however, is an optional session based on the familiarity of the workshop participants with the content. The content will go over how Skype for Business connects people, the benefits around Skype-inspired design, meeting experiences that can be expected out of Skype for Business solution, integrated voice over IP benefits with Skype for Business, Office integration, and security aspects of Skype for Business. It is expected for you, as the workshop facilitator, to familiarize with the content and be prepared to deliver. Instead of using the deck, consider using a real-life demo to showcase the talking points. It is important for you to read the room and seek input from participants whether they want to go over this content. Going into the deployment model discussion, this is where you, as the workshop facilitator, will drive a decision to be made regarding how Skype for Business will be deployed. With most organizations embracing the cloud-first strategy, the obvious options would be to deploy Skype for Business online in the first instance. This is a great choice for organizations that have no unique functionalities that can only be delivered using the on-premises deployment. In the online deployment model, all users will be hosted in Skype for Business Online and enabled for Cloud PBX. Dial-in conferencing will be provided by Microsoft or audio conferencing provider partners, and PSTN connectivity can be achieved by using Microsoft PSTN calling, available in the US and UK at the moment, or using on-premises PSTN connectivity via Cloud Connector. On the opposite side, on-premises deployment model will be typically driven out of compliance requirements or unique functionalities required by all users that cannot be provided by Skype for Business Online. As the middle ground, the hybrid deployment model can be considered if some parts of the organizations found Skype for Business Online capabilities meeting their requirements while maintaining coexistence with their existing on-premises deployment. In the hybrid deployment model, generally some users will be hosted in Skype for Business Online, while the rest will remain in the on-premises environment. All users in the organization will share the same SIP address, address book, and they will feel as if they are in a single deployment. For the hybrid users hosted online, requirements around dial-in conferencing and PSTN connectivity will be similar to users in online deployment model. They have to use Microsoft PSTN conferencing or ACP partners for dial-in conferencing, and they have an option to use Microsoft PSTN calling or on-premises PSN connectivity for Cloud PBX. Note, at this point in time, when hybrid deployment model is selected, then Cloud Connector cannot be an option to be enabled on-premises PSTN connectivity for the entire organization. There is an ongoing development efforts to remove this requirement, and stay tuned for the updated guidance on this. Setting the context back to Cloud PBX and Cloud PSTN conferencing, since the users will be hosted in Skype for Business Online, then a decision must be made in regards to user management and authentication. User provisioning and deprovisioning can be done directly in the cloud. This is only applicable to online deployment model only. Or if the organization already uses Active Directory, they may elect to synchronize the identities to the cloud. This is applicable to both online and hybrid deployment models. As for authentication, For cloud identities, whether they are managed directly in the cloud or synchronized from on-premises Active Directory, there is an option to use a totally separate password. This is the least preferred option from end user point of view, or to use synchronized password. This is only applicable to synchronized identity, allowing users to use the same credential to access on-premises resources and cloud resources. For organization that wishes to maintain authentication to occur only in the on-premises environment, there is a choice of using federated identity. In this option, any authentication attempts for users in Windows Azure AD will be redirected to the on-premises identity provider or IDP solution, such as Active Directory Federation Service or ADFS. With federated identity, the organization maintains full control of all authentication workflow. This will also mean that unavailability of the IDP solution due to maintenance or disaster will affect cloud service availability. So the IDP solution must be deployed with high availability and site resiliency in mind to reduce the likelihood of a downtime. The decision around user management and authentication may already be sorted out if the organization already uses the services offered by Office 365 or Azure. However, the technical decision around this topic may need to be revisited if hybrid deployment model come into play as part of the Cloud PBX implementation. A customer example that I can share with you. Until recently, a customer is using all of the Office 365 services, including Skype for Business Online, in the cloud only. Exchange Hybrid is not deployed, let alone Skype for Business Hybrid. They are using synchronized cloud identity with password sync. However, they made the decision of not updating the on-premises Active Directory UPNs or user principal names. For example, they are using bob@contoso.local as on-premises UPN. Things work just fine as users have been instructed to use their email address and the same password as their Active Directory password to access Office 365 services. For example, they are using bob@contoso.com as Cloud VPN. When planning to deploy Cloud PBX via hybrid deployment model, they soon realized that Skype for Business authentication will first occur in the on-premises environment. And due to the different UPNs between on-premises and the cloud, the end-user experience will be broken. The on-premises web ticket authentication process will need to use the on-premises Active Directory UPN, in this case bob@contoso.local, whilst the online web ticket authentication will use the Azure AD UPN, in this case bob@contoso.com. Imagine the confusion from end-user point of view when they are trying to sign in to Skype for Business once the link discover service has been changed to point to the on-premises deployment. Based on that example, it is important to revisit the Office 365 user management and authentication past decision and make a plan to address any potential blockers. Further identity-related technical decision discussions should be addressed in detail as part of Cloud PBX architectural workshop. The choice that was made around deployment model will present the migration options from existing solution to Skype for Business Online. There's the online greenfield approach that will be suitable for organizations that do not currently use OCS or Office Communication Server, Link Server, or Skype for Business Server. Enablement of users can be performed on a single go or gradually. In further technical details will need to be ironed out in regard to phone number migration, if it is required or desired. The second one is hybrid approach. This will be suitable for organization that needs to maintain long-term coexistence due to technical or non-technical requirements. Please note that when it comes to hybrid for IMN presence and conferencing and hybrid cloud PBX, there are differences regarding the supported on-premises topology. Link Server 2013 Edge Pool is the minimum requirement to support hybrid for cloud PBX. The third one is stage migration approach, which is similar to hybrid approach. However, the hybrid setup is used just to facilitate user migration from on-premises environment to Skype for Business Online. At the end of migration, the hybrid setup will be torn down, and the organization will move to online deployment model, granting the organization ability to use Cloud Connector today if they require on-premises PSTN connectivity. The last one is cutover migration approach that will land the organization to the same experience as greenfield approach by foregoing the existing deployment. Typically, this is taken for unsupported legacy environment, such as Office Communication Server 2007 or 2007 R2, and taking the journey to gradually upgrade to the supported environment is either cost prohibitive or not time effective. To complete the discussion around migration options, most relevant to organizations that use meetings today, be that online meeting or dial-in conferencing, meetings migration must be considered. For users migrated to Skype for Business Online from existing on-premises environment, currently scheduled meetings must be updated with the new meeting join URL and dial-in conferencing phone number and conference ID. The Skype for Business meeting update tool can be leveraged to automate the process. However, it is a client-driven activity. Therefore, this must be included as part of end-user adoption plan, and the tool must be installed on the client machines prior to migration. For users migrated from other solutions or when the use of meeting update tool is not possible, such as when SIP address change is involved during the migration, users will need to be instructed to reschedule the existing meetings or enable the meetings to become Skype meetings in Outlook. Again, this must be included as part of the end-user adoption plan. After deliberating all of the options, this is the time to make decisions through whiteboarding activity. 4 items to be concluded. First is the deployment model. Second, user management and authentication. The third one, migration approach. And the last one, migration of meetings. A customer example that I can give you. This is a customer whereby they are the regional banks with offices in several countries. At the corporate HQ level, the organization mandated the cloud-first approach in deploying new solutions. They are planning to subscribe to Office 365 and uses all of the services for their offices in the region and migrate out of the existing non-Microsoft solution. At this point, this customer appears to be suitable for online deployment model. Throughout the workshop, it was found that one country has a central bank regulation that prevents the use of offshore cloud services, and therefore, all users for this country must be hosted in the on-premises environment. In light of this finding, this customer decided to choose the hybrid deployment model. For user management and authentication, the bank security policy mandated that all authentication to be handled in the on-premises environment. And therefore, synchronized federated identity is chosen. And the bank will need to plan to deploy ADFS as the IDP solution, and it has to meet the high availability and site residency requirements. Since hybrid deployment model is involved, it will be maintained for a long term until the change of central bank regulation. Hybrid approach will be taken for the migration of the Skype for Business solution. As the customer is moving from non-Microsoft solutions, meeting migration will be addressed as part of the adoption plan. The next topic to discuss is conferencing, in particular the PSTN conferencing capabilities in Skype for Business Online. You, as the workshop facilitator, are expected to drive a decision around the use of cloud PSTN conferencing at a high level. As the facilitator, you can start this session by talking about basic conferencing capabilities in Skype for Business, from IM, audio, video, to web conferencing capabilities. And you can emphasize on the single client user experience. Then, you can talk about the devices that support the meeting experience, the variety of options of meeting devices, the Skype room systems, and Surface Hub. Show the page to the provided link, or if physical devices are available, show to the workshop participants and give them opportunity to touch and feel the devices. Moving on to the new capability, the Cloud PSTN conferencing. The first topic to talk about is the countries where Cloud PSTN conferencing can be purchased. This deck shows the latest list of countries as of today, but please review the latest list prior to delivering the workshop. The Sell to Countries list is an important topic that is related to the decisions of where the Office 365 tenant will be based out of. This is particularly important if the organization is located in multiple countries and no Office 365 tenant has been provisioned. Or this topic is important to understand whether Cloud PSTN conferencing is an option for the organization now or in the near future, or to find out whether alternative arrangement will need to be made, such as using audio conferencing provider solution. If Cloud PSTN conferencing is not available now in certain country, perhaps it will be available soon. Please work with the Microsoft account team to find out the plan regarding that said country. The Sell to Country list does not constitute the list of countries where the dial-in conferencing phone numbers are available. For example, while presently Australia is not in the list of Sell to countries, organizations that provision their Office 365 tenant in Singapore, for example, can support external organizations local to Australia joining PSTN conferences hosted in Microsoft Cloud PSTN conferencing by calling local Australian number instead of calling internationally to Singapore phone number. The exhaustive list of countries or regions that have dial-in conferencing phone numbers can be reviewed from phone numbers for dial-in conferencing page. You can look it up using Bing. When delivering the workshop, you are expected to go through the list with the workshop participants to seek understanding whether the organization's requirements can be met now or in the future. One feature that can be enabled on Cloud PSTN conferencing is the toll-free numbers. This will allow external organizations to dial into the meeting without having to pay for the call. Aside from using the shared toll-free numbers, organizations in countries supported by PSTN calling service can set up their own toll-free number, either by acquiring new phone number or porting existing phone number. The complete list of countries or regions that have toll-free numbers can be reviewed from Where Can I Get the Toll-Free Numbers page. You are expected to go through the list of countries or regions where the toll-free number is offered and seek understanding whether the organization's requirements can be met. The cloud PSTN conferencing is undergoing a constant development and refinement, and availability will be expanded. In terms of current limitations and solutions or workarounds, they can be reviewed from Dell-in conferencing known issues page. Workshop facilitator is expected to go through the list to seek understanding whether the limitation will hinder or delay adoption by the organization. Upon deciding that Cloud PSTN conferencing will meet current and/or the future requirements, next step is to discuss about licensing aspects of Cloud PSTN conferencing. If the organization has subscribed to Office 365 E5, there is not much to discuss anymore since the capability is already included. Otherwise, the organization needs to consider whether they will subscribe to an add-on for PSTN conferencing or switch to Office 365 E5 subscription. You, as the workshop facilitator, will need to bring up PSTN consumption billing as prerequisite for toll-free conferencing phone numbers and conference dial-out. Use the opportunity to discuss about transition from Office 365 E4, if applicable, to the organization. The final decision on this topic may not be resolved as part of the workshop, but at least this will kickstart further discussions that the organization will need to take in regards to procurements of the add-ons or subscriptions. To reiterate the previously discussed topic around migration, for users migrated to Skype for Business Online from existing on-premises environment or from PSTN conferencing provided by ACP partners to Microsoft Cloud PSTN conferencing, currently scheduled meetings must be updated with the new dial-in conferencing phone number and conference ID. The Skype for Business meeting update tool can be leveraged to automate the process as previously discussed. For users migrated from other solutions or when the use of meeting update tool is not possible, manual update must be taken and users must be informed on how to do that. Ensure this is included in the adoption plan. After deliberating all of the options, this is the time to make decision through whiteboarding activity. 6 items to be concluded. Coverage of service, which site or region to be enabled for Cloud PSTN conferencing, which site or region to be enabled for third-party ACP solution. Devices for the conference rooms, what device for sites or regions enabled for conferencing. Toll-free numbers, which site or region to be enabled for toll-free numbers, and whether new phone numbers will be used or existing phone numbers will be ported. PSTN consumption billing requirement, and most relevant to organization migrating from third-party solution is how to address known service limitation to end users. This could be through the end user adoption plan. Migration of meetings. So all of that topic needs to be concluded before we move on with the next topic. The last topic to discuss is Cloud PBX. In particular, the options to enable Cloud PBX and provide PSTN connectivity. You, as the workshop facilitator, are expected to drive a decision around the use of Cloud PBX at the high level. The first topic to discuss is the various Cloud PBX deployment options, and recognize that the previous deployment model decision will influence the depth and length of the discussion. For online deployment model, you need to discuss about PSTN calling and PSTN connectivity via cloud connector. For hybrid deployment model, you need to discuss about PSTN connectivity via existing deployment, and depending on the scale of the organization, PSTN calling can be discussed as well. Please also reiterate that presently Cloud Connector cannot coexist with hybrid deployment model. To further understand the available Cloud PBX features, be that current or future, for each deployment option, and contrasting with on-premises enterprise voice, you can discuss the table based on the deployment model of choice. For online deployment model, discuss about features of PSTN calling and PSTN connectivity via Cloud Connector. For hybrid deployment model, discuss about the features of enterprise voice, PSTN connectivity via existing deployment, and PSTN calling. Bring up the point around voicemail differences between enterprise voice versus Cloud PBX, and the relationships with Exchange Online, and various other topics in the table as required. With all the background information regarding Cloud PBX have been discussed, the next step is for you as the workshop facilitator to step through the general decision tree. The decision would be quite obvious at this point. Cloud PBX is expected to meet the entire or a portion of user population within the organization, and the PSTN connectivity options will be decided at the high level. It could be either all Microsoft PSTN calling, all on-premises PSTN connectivity, or even a combination of both for a larger, geographically distributed organization. Going one down level to the site level of Cloud PBX implementation, discuss about possible site architecture that can be adopted for each site in scope for the project. Type 1 sites using Microsoft PSTN calling service will require nothing more than an internet connection to Office 365. Type 2 sites using centralized on-premises PSTN connectivity will potentially require additional bandwidth to support connectivity to Office 365 and on-premises mediation pool and PSTN gateways. In this site architecture, given media traffic will traverse the corporate wide area network, consider implementing quality of service or COS to manage media traffic over WAN links. Type 3 sites using local PSTN breakouts can be the most complex deployment. When using Cloud Connector, it means the site will need to have perimeter network and can publish Cloud Connector directly to the internet. When using existing pool, providing local PSTN breakout can be as simple as having a local PSTN gateway and a local mediation server recommended to ensure media traffic is localized to the site, and thus reducing WAN bandwidth utilization. The next step is to finalize the high-level decisions per site level for all of the sites in scope for the project. Depending on the organization's requirements, where applicable, you, as the workshop facilitator, are expected to drive cloud-first approach when making decisions, such as prioritizing PSTN calling service over on-premises PSTN connectivity and Cloud Connector over hybrid. When on-premises PSTN connectivity is chosen, discuss about the possibility to centralize the PSTN connectivity to reduce the on-premises infrastructure footprint. ensure network bandwidth, link quality, and cost are discussed as considerations when implementing centralized PSTN connectivity. Go through the workflow for each site in scope of the project. Upon deciding that Cloud PBX will meet current and/or future requirements, the next step is to discuss about the licensing aspects of Cloud PBX. If the organization have subscribed to Office 365, again, there is not much to discuss anymore since the capability is already included. Otherwise, the organization needs to consider whether they will subscribe to an add-on for Cloud PBX or switch to Office 365 E5 subscription. Where applicable, discuss about PSTN calling add-on and the available plans for PSTN calling add-on. There are domestic-only plan and domestic and international plan. Bring up PSTN consumption billing as the add-on to enable users to continue to make calls after their pool of minutes is exhausted. Use the opportunity to discuss about transition from Office 365 E4, if applicable to the organization. The final decisions on this topic may not be resolved as part of the workshop, but at least this will kickstart further discussion that the organization will need to take in regards to procurements of the add-ons or subscriptions. After going through all of the options, this is the time to make decisions through whiteboarding activity. 5 items to be concluded. First is the sites in scope for Cloud PBX. Second is the high-level Cloud PBX architecture. The third one is site architecture chosen for each site, whether it is centralized versus distributed PSTN connectivity. The fourth is how licensing requirements will be addressed. And for sites with PSTN calling, which plans to subscribe and assign to users. You can leverage existing class of service definitions in the existing PBX solution to assist this process. Awareness on the importance of cost. This will be the conversation starter for the importance of the network readiness workshop. To sum up, at the end of the workshop, you as the facilitator must be able to describe all of the decision points with regards to deployment model, PSTN conferencing, and Cloud PBX. The decisions must be agreed by all workshop participants. The outcome of this workshop will be documented as part of the vision and scope document and presented to organization to gain acceptance and agreement and allow the project to move to the next stage. Before we conclude this training, let's touch on execution planning workshop briefly. The execution planning workshop is delivered as part of the envision stage of plan phase in SOF execution model. The execution planning workshop is the opportunity for project team members to make strategic objectives and high-level architecture a reality. In order to deliver the execution planning workshop, as it will result in roles and responsibilities assignment and project timeline, the most important thing is to have a decision maker is in the room. It is important that prior to conducting the workshop, you as the workshop facilitator are familiar with the organization's strategic objectives, business use cases, high-level architecture, and adoption plan, and ensure all of the subsequent relevant workshops have been completed with the outcomes signed off by related parties. To facilitate the delivery of the workshop, SOF provides an asset called Envisioning Execution Planning Workshop deck that the facilitator can use. Please review the content prior to delivery and modify the deck as necessary to better fit the organization's context. In delivering this training session, I will use the asset to walk you through the workshop process. The execution planning workshop is expected to produce the following outcomes: quarterly execution plan with roles and responsibilities or RACI model defined for each activity, risk plan, communication and governance plan, and the way to measure project success or progress by establishing the key success indicators. The execution planning workshop is not meant to deliver the detailed project plans. The outcomes of the execution planning workshop will provide an input to the detailed project plans. However, prior to spending an effort on the detailed project plan, conclude the envision stage by completing the vision scope document and presenting the content to the key project stakeholder to get a sign-off. The flow of execution planning workshop can be described as the following diagram. First, you plan for the deployment execution model, and then you define key stakeholders for the program level, project level, and site execution level. Define the RACI model for the execution model based on the key stakeholders that have been defined. Develop the quarterly execution plan, and then include the risks associated with the program, project, or site execution to the risk plan. Define the communication on governance plan, and establish the key success indicators or KSIs to measure the outcomes of the execution planning in achieving the long-term objective key results. When choosing the deployment execution models, you as the workshop facilitator will need to work through the options with the organization and make decisions on the deployment execution model that will be most acceptable to the organization. Per site, per division, or combination of both, and company at once are all valid deployment execution models. Customer example, a mining company with sites all over the world is planning to implement Cloud PBX. With IT resources spread across the organization decided to first execute the project for Information Services Division in the first quarter as part of the pilot, and then roll out throughout the organization at the per site basis. This way, the resources to support site deployment will be already familiar with the solution, and everybody in the Information Services Division can be site champion for the rollout of Cloud PBX. As part of SOF asset for this workshop, there is a series of tables that list the roles and description of project key stakeholders. You as the workshop facilitator will need to work with the workshop participants to fill out the list. Depending on the size of the organization, some roles may be owned by the same person, and if consulting company is involved, may include roles owned by people or external to the organization. The tables are just a starting point. For a larger organization, it is expected that the roles to be defined based on deployment execution plan. Moving on to RACI model. RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Communicated, and Informed Model. SOF provides an asset called Envision Scope RACI spreadsheet that includes the roles and description and RACI model for the get deployed offer execution. As the workshop facilitator, you are expected to go through the list and make adjustments as necessary based on the agreed upon deployment execution plan. The quarterly execution plan will map the high-level architecture plan with the time frame that works for the organization based on resource availability, service availability, and/or organizational event that will take place within the timeline, such as cutout for out of support contract of existing PBX, building move, or etc. You will work with the workshop participant to define the quarterly plan. Risks are inherent in any project and therefore must be managed. Work with the workshop participants to identify and qualify any risks associated with the project and agree on mitigating plan for each identified risk. To ensure the project execution is well tracked, work with the workshop participants to establish the communication and governance plan. Assign the owner for each and the list of required and optional participants. Use the example provided by the SOF asset for this workshop and adjust based on organizational governance process if a well-established model is already adopted. Key success indicator. This is the last outcome expected out of the execution planning workshop. KSI is the measurement of quality and success of key results using key success indicators, or KSI. The project KSIs must match the organization strategy as defined as OKR. And SMART, specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-bound, must be leveraged when defining the KSI. SOF assets for the Get Deployed offer provide the starting set of KSI for Cloud PBX and Cloud PSTN conferencing deployment to help you as the workshop facilitator to deliver the execution planning workshop. To sum up, at the end of the workshop, you as the facilitator must be able to recap all of the decisions, assignments, commitments, and plans that have been developed throughout this workshop. All of the workshop outcomes must be agreed by all workshop participants, and the outcomes of this workshop will be documented as part of the vision scope document and presented to the organization to gain acceptance and agreement and allow the project to move to the next stage. Thank you very much for watching this training. Please refer to the resources described here to learn more about SOF, give your feedback on SOF, and to look for additional trainings that will be delivered as part of Skype Academy on SOF. I will return the session back to Janice for closing.
All right, thank you, August. All right, audience, we're going to be going into a formal Q&A in just a few moments, but before we do that, I'd like to bring your attention to a link in the upper right-hand corner of the video pane that says, please take a short survey. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to August to do some Q&A. If you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and type your question into the white text box, either to the right of the video player or by scrolling down to just under the video player. August, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Janice. So throughout this session, we received some of the questions. And I think I'll address some of that, and the rest I will address offline. So one question is around what country had the banking regulation that prevented cloud services? Is there a real example? Is there a knowledge base that we can reference for countries with similar regulations? So it is real, and I know for sure Indonesia is one of the countries where they prevented cloud services. And another example is where Singapore, they recently allowed that. Malaysia just followed the example from Singapore, and basically the Malaysian banking authority will have an audit steps that a bank will have to go through for them to be able to use cloud services. I'm not certain whether there is a knowledge base that we can refer to for countries with similar regulations, but this is where you need to work with the customer to actually surface all of these requirements. Another question is around extension dialing for PSTN calling or CC users. As far as I know, at this point in time, it's not available, it's not supported, but you can actually make this work by using transition rules on a gateway. But it could present a negative user experience. And the last question is around the meeting migration tool. Does it work on recurring meetings? As far as I know, this should work. But again, if the tool doesn't work, then it's best just to inform the user to reschedule the meeting. And we will come up with a solution for this on the back-end side. Stay tuned, but it's not available for public yet. Any other question? Okay, so since that's the last question that I received, I think we can conclude this session. So to sum up, so just to make sure that you understand that if we come back to the high-level architecture workshop, ensure that you get all the points across and get the decisions on the deployment model of choice, how cloud PSTN conferencing will be implemented, and how cloud PBX solution will be implemented. And in terms of the execution planning workshop, ensure you follow all the flow that we've described and come up with a plan that is that can be executed and then agreed upon by organization. Thank you for joining me in this training session. Be on the look for the next training that will be delivered tomorrow. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, August. All right, attendees, that does conclude the, today's web conference. You may access the web conference recording via a link that will be delivered within 72 hours post-conference. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, August, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today. You may now disconnect.
Thank you.